in any event, I'm Earl Lane. I'm the executive director of the AAAS Kavli Science Journalism Awards. And they're endowed by the Kavli Foundation and has become really a global contest. We had more entries from outside the U.S. this year than we did from the U.S. We had 57% of the entries were international. And 7 of our awards were outright international, and 2 others were collaborations between international and domestic outlets. So about half, or just over half, of the awards now go to the international folks. There were winning entrants, and they're here from Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Nigeria for the 2nd year in a row. The Netherlands, I'm sorry, I said them, and the United Kingdom, which comes pretty much every year. So Ashley Smart, who won the award 2 years ago and is deputy editor of Undark magazine and with the Night journalism program at MIT, was going to be our moderator. Over the weekend, his youngest son got the flu, and he sent me a note saying, "I'm not feeling very well, and I just hope I can make it." He sent me a note this afternoon and said he just is miserable, so I'm not going to say, "Get up there and give me awards." So I and my colleague Emily Hughes, the senior program associate, will do the honors. And the first step is to have Sudip Parikh, who is the CEO of AAAS and the executive publisher of the Science family of journals, make a few welcoming remarks. Sudip.
Good evening, everybody. Oh, come on, I'm having this thing today where I get up on stage and nobody answers me. Good evening, everybody. All right, I like that. Thanks, Earl. I always look forward to this ceremony because, well, I have prepared remarks, but I'm just going to talk for a second. It says a minute. When I was an undergraduate, I was a journalism major. And I thought that I was going to be the next Charles Kuralt because I was from North Carolina, which is hysterical, right? A guy named Sudip Parikh was going to be the next Charles Kuralt. But I got there, and I was taking the courses I was told to take, and I was taking calculus. And I got pulled aside. I went to go see my advisor during that time, and the advisor said, "Sudip, why are you taking calculus?" And I said, "Because I like it." And he gave me the worst advice I've ever gotten, which is he said, "Maybe you shouldn't be a journalist." And that has stuck with me for 35 years because the idea that journalism shouldn't be connected to science or math or engineering or technology is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. The work that you all do, bringing stories to life, holding scientists accountable. How do you hold them accountable if you don't understand it? That's important work. In fact, it's part of the enterprise. The enterprise can't survive without it. And so I look at you, and I'm reminded of my own failings of not being a journalist at this time. But I celebrate the fact that there are wonderful folks all around the world who are holding scientists accountable, who are telling our stories, who are presenting the data and the information in ways that policymakers and citizens alike can actually act upon it. And so I celebrate you, and I celebrate this award. The idea for this award, it's been founded in 1945, and it's entering its 80th year. How extraordinary is that? What foresight 80 years ago? And the fact that this well-respected global contest happens every year is thanks to the incredible support of the Kavli Foundation, and it's also thanks to the fact that journalism still lives. Journalism still exists. Journalism still does the work of holding us accountable and telling our stories. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being here. And congratulations to all the winners. And for those of you who haven't won, there's work to be done. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sudip. I'd also now like to have a few remarks from Brooke Smith, Director for Science and Society at the Kavli Foundation and a steadfast supporter of the awards.
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see you. Thank you, Sudeep, for your remarks as well. I'm so honored to be here tonight to celebrate the award winners and to celebrate science journalism. The Kavli Foundation is really proud to be the name sponsor of these journalism awards. This is due to a contribution that we made in the form of an endowment to the AAAS. And the special thing about an endowment is it exists in perpetuity. It's not a termed grant that goes away in a couple years because we believe science journalism should exist in perpetuity. Our foundation is a philanthropic enterprise that predominantly supports basic science in the fields of nanoscience, astrophysics, and neuroscience, or as we say, the big, the small, and the complex. I have the privilege of directing our Science and Society program. Our founder, Fred Kavli, he was Norwegian, and he came to the States and started a very successful engineering business and decided to give back by investing into basic science. Fred also thought that it was incredibly important to make sure that we weren't just doing the science, but that we were connecting science to society and to the public and to people. And that's what you do. And I'm so excited to celebrate your work and all of your awards tonight. All of you being honored tonight have beautifully done this in connecting science to society. And I don't just mean the products of science. I mean the people, the process, the wonder, the trials, the tribulations, the messiness, everything that goes into science. You've connected people through awe and curiosity, through human experience, through local neighborhoods. You've shown surprising yet very human sides of scientists and doctors so that people can get a view behind what's behind that lab coat. You've shined a light on rivers this year, whether that be atmospheric rivers, rusted rivers, or hidden rivers. You've shown that disagreement in science does not just mean we don't know, it means we're doing science. And you've created space to show that there's multiple ways of knowing, and that that's really important in the scientific enterprise. So thank you so much for your work. Congratulations to all the awardees. I can't wait to celebrate you. Thank you to AAAS for your leadership in this award and in science journalism. And thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Brooke. Okay, so let's meet our winners. For excellence in science reporting large outlet, the Silver Award goes to Jayla Bernstein and Emily Chung of CBC News in Canada for a richly illustrated report that described ancient rivers flowing beneath major Canadian cities. They asked whether the hidden waterways will be revived or fade from memory. Restoring buried waterways could have multiple benefits, including absorbing carbon dioxide, reducing flooding, and providing habitat for wild and native plants. Mud Creek, which flows beneath Toronto, is one candidate for daylighting, the practice of uncovering sections of buried streams where feasible. Judge Duda Menegassi, a freelance environmental journalist in Brazil, called the CBC story fresh, visually stunning, and delightful to read. Bernstein and is Chung here tonight? No, she's not. But Jayla Bernstein is. Sorry. So come on up and accept your award.
Hi, everyone. So I will try to keep it to a tight 45 seconds. I'm used to 2 minutes when I do broadcast, but I'll keep it tight. As you mentioned, Earl, Emily couldn't make it. Her flight was canceled because of a snowstorm, unfortunately. But I know she will agree with me in saying that we're very honored to have this award, and it really does go out to the people who were in our story. We had a lot of scientists and a lot of researchers in our story, but we also had a lot of community organizers. And they were really the heart of the story, the people who did not give up and had been fighting for not just years, but decades to get these buried rivers hidden in the sewers under their cities revived and brought back to life. And some of them are succeeding in Canada in making these climate solutions. So really, they're inspiring us, and we're really happy to have been able to tell their story. And I also just want to thank everyone who's not named in this award who made it visually stunning, as you mentioned, our photographers, our drone operators, our designers, our web developers, everyone who participated. So thank you. Thank you very much.
So Emily is going to present the Gold Award.
Hi, everyone. The Gold Award for Science Reporting Large Outlet goes to Samar Bashaj for a piece in The Guardian US on trauma surgeon Joseph Sakharin, who was shot in the throat as a teenager and who now saves victims of gun violence in the emergency room at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. Quote, "Medicine has long prided itself on being dispassionate, evidence-based, and unmoored by external factors," Bashaj wrote. But Sakharin is, quote, "a physician whose scope of practice swells beyond the hospital walls." He is a leading gun reform activist organizing tens of thousands of healthcare workers. With gun violence a very real threat to public health, treating the individual patient alone is not enough. Judge Ariel Duham-Ross, a freelance science journalist and podcast host, said Bashaj's piece, quote, "does an excellent job of diving into the history behind apolitical approaches to medicine, as well as the impact that a doctor can have when they decide to speak up about the issues affecting their patient's health." Samar?
I'm just incredibly honored to be here, incredibly honored to have this award. I started doing journalism a little bit less than 3 years ago, in summer 2022, when I was rejected from every internship I applied for. I had no journalism experience. I had just done some research articles, and it was crushing. I mean, it felt that you needed to have experience to get experience. I was like, it's a chicken and the egg problem. This is awful. And then a mentor, a very prescient mentor, said, "Simmer, why don't you just freelance? Like, what's stopping you?" I was like, well, not knowing how to do this feels like a big barrier. But I took her recommendation, cold emailed hundreds of editors that summer, right? Awfully horrible pitches. But I think figuring out by doing, and it's just, I'm just so grateful for the editors that took a chance on me, that taught me how to write, that taught me how to do this properly. And I want to particularly thank Jessica Reed, who was my editor for this story, who I sent this story to her on spec, 5,000 words, and she read it, she thought it was interesting, and she decided to publish it. So no, I mean, it is truly an honor to be here. And I just also want to thank Dr. Sakharin, who was the subject of this profile. I mean, a horrible story, being shot in the neck at age 17, who now works as a trauma surgeon, constantly re-traumatized by his work, constantly being on the wards, trying to save those lives, and recognizing that the problem of gun violence, which affects over 100,000 people, 100,000 Americans each year, this problem will never be solved by better surgery. So recognizing the limits of medicine and the work that we need to do beyond the hospital walls in order to address it, the work we need to do in advocacy and beyond. Thanks so much again for this honor and opportunity.
So the award for science reporting for a small outlet in the Silver Award goes to Emily Sohn for her story in The Transmitter of Maiken Nedergaard, a Danish neuroscientist. She is known for her research on a network of channels that carry cerebrospinal fluid to and from the brain to wash away waste products. The research, one of Science Magazine's breakthroughs of the year in 2013, remains controversial. Though arguing over results is a standard practice in science, this conversation has intensified in a way that has surprised even those involved, Sohn wrote. But big ideas can draw interest to overlooked topics, argues Per Christian Ida of Oslo University. In science, you need some kind of disruptive changes to actually impact a field, he told Sohn. Judge Dan Vergano, senior opinion editor for Scientific American, called Sohn's piece, A Carefully Crafted Deconstruction of a Scientific Conflict over the Workings of the Human Brain. The story reveals how science really advances in sometimes sharp disagreements that play out in experiments and debate over decades. Emily.
Thanks for coming, everybody. I want to thank everyone at the transmitter, especially my editor, Brady Huggett. I also want to thank fact checker Yvonne McGreevy. They both helped me make sure this was accurate and thorough, and to AAAS for this great honor. I'm also grateful to Maiken Nedergaard and her colleagues and adversaries who don't agree on much, but are doing essential work to understand how the brain works, how fluids move through it, and address brain diseases. Progress is not always linear, but the process of science moves us forward. Thank you so much.
The Gold Award for Science Reporting Large Outlet goes to Abdul Wahid Sofiolahi for his story on Humangle, a Nigerian online news site. He described a widespread, yet often overlooked issue in Nigeria's Delta region, where 2 million people live within 4 kilometers of oil extraction sites with wasteful natural gas flaring. Residents frequently report respiratory problems, skin rashes, and eye irritations, affecting over 2/3 of the population, Sofiolahi reported. He arranged for an air quality specialist to conduct a field study that measured concentrations of key pollutants, such as carbon monoxide and sulfur, near a major gas flaring facility. The analysis revealed concentrations of air pollutants exceeding the limits set by the World Health Organization. Judge Judah Menegasi praised Sofiolahi's, quote, great journalistic effort, shedding light on the dangerous relation between air quality of gas flaring facilities and the health of nearby residents. Abdul Wahid.
Good evening, everyone. It feels good to be the only African among the 2024 winners. And first of all, I would like to thank the editors of Human Angle Media in Nigeria, who gives platform for young freelancers like me, though it's so tough to be a freelancer in Nigeria and Africa generally, but they gave the platform to tell the important stories. This story was actually motivated by the health effects of the local communities, of the local community residents in Nigeria who live closely to the gas flaring sites. So people do talk about it, but they don't believe until I decided to go extra mile to pursue the story and make sure that we conducted an air quality test which provided a science-proven evidence, and it's so quite impressive, and I would like to thank AAAS for this wonderful recognition. Thank you very much.
The Silver Award for Science Reporting in Depth goes to Gemma Van Huysen for a deeply personal story for NRC, a national newspaper in the Netherlands. Van Huysen knew her aorta was slightly enlarged, and she had been undergoing annual heart scans to monitor the aortic bulge. After her 2023 exam, she visited her cardiologist expecting reassuring words, but they didn't come. The scans showed an increased bulge that had, in an instant, become a ticking time bomb. Her doctor discussed conventional surgical options, but also mentioned a less invasive approach that wraps the aorta with a sort of compression sock. Van Huysen took readers through her search for answers, both as a science journalist and as a concerned patient. She decided to go with the wrapping procedure, becoming patient number 935 worldwide to undergo the procedure. Judge Laura Helmuth, a veteran science journalist, called Van Huysen's writing open, funny, welcoming, and humane. It expressed the patient's fears, she said, while also evaluating the research and technology with dispassion and expertise. Gemma.
Good evening, everyone. It's funny, 1 year ago I was still recovering from this heart surgery, and my brain was still so fuzzy from the anesthesia that I seriously thought I could never write a coherent newspaper article again. So you can see that standing here tonight and celebrating with you all is a very special and heartwarming moment. And of course I want to thank AAAS and the Kavli Foundation, but also the two main characters in my story, the inventor of this procedure, Tel Goldsworthy, and the surgeon Dave Koolbergen, who not only opened up to me, but also was the one to cut me open. He was the only surgeon in the Netherlands, daring this new procedure. And in addition, I want to thank Annette Mills for the translation, my colleagues at the newspaper, and my parents. They are sitting, they're there. My mom is filming. but thank you for your support after the surgery and also coming with me here. And actually, I just found out that now it's American Heart Month. And, it's very convenient, I think. And I really hope that there will be a lot more of groundbreaking heart surgery, both in the US and outside. Thank you.
The Gold Award for Science Reporting in Depth goes to Serena Renner for a comprehensive piece in Hakai magazine on the history and impact of great storms called atmospheric rivers. She told her readers how one of the storms in November 2021 dumped nearly a month's worth of rain in 2 days on the British Columbia community of Abbotsford. Sumas Lake, which had been drained for farms and urban development despite supporting Indigenous peoples for millennia, returned, if temporarily, to its historic territory. In California, Renner notes, communities are giving up new ground for water and restoring some natural water systems, quote, to work with rain when it comes. In Abbotsford, reviving Sumas Lake could make the region more resilient to water extremes, but its restoration will require buy-in from the wider community. Judge Ashley Smart of Undark magazine, our would-be host tonight, was a judge in this category and found that Renner's story, quote, was written in gorgeous prose, with lively pacing, smart structure, vivid scenes, and intriguing characters. Serena?
Thank you so much. It's such a huge honor to be standing up here today. And thank you, Ashley, if you're in the room or the building, for those very flattering words. As any climate reporter in the room knows, this is not the happiest of beats, especially right now. So I think awards like this are really important for validation and motivation to keep doing this often depressing work. This also feels like support for narrative climate and science journalism. Communication studies show that facts and information alone don't move people very much, but stories do. Stories about solutions and about the wonders of science, stories about the resilience of people and nature, even amid growing extremes. So I just want to thank all the people who made this story possible, to my former team at Hakai Magazine, rest in peace. They ceased publication at the end of 2024, but most of the team went on to Biographic Magazine. I want to thank my editor, Sarah Gilman, and all of my sources, especially Murray Ned from Samath First Nation, whose personal story shows that flooding isn't always just an act of devastation, it's also an act of restoration. Finally, thank you so much to the AAAS judges. This honestly is like the honor of my career so far, so thank you so much.
The silver award in the magazine category goes to Alec Loon for the story, Why Are Alaska's Rivers Turning Orange, in Scientific American. It is a harrowing look at the harmful impact a warming climate has had on Alaska's Salmon River, which, as Loon writes, is quite literally rusting, along with at least 75 other Alaska rivers. Loon accompanied scientists in the field trying to find the cause of the orange waters. Some scientists suggest that as the Alaskan permafrost thaws, bedrock being exposed to water for the first time in millennia is leaching iron and possibly heavy metals. Others suggest that bacteria are mobilizing iron from the soil in the thawing wetlands. Whatever the cause, the effects can be dramatic. An Alaskan village on the Woolik River had long been degraded by toxins from a nearby zinc mine. Now, the permafrost thaw is a bigger polluter than the mine. Judge Megan Multaney, health and science writer at STAT, called the story a gripping look at what it takes for researchers to unravel an ecological mystery with far-reaching impacts on animal and human health. Alec.
Hello, thank you for being here. Science is under attack in our country right now. Journalism is under attack in our country right now. And the science journalism that these awards support is the fact that these awards are supporting that science journalism is I think, the start to fighting back. You know, I'm on the climate beat, the doom and gloom beat. It's important to find stories and unexpected angles to keep readers engaged and interested in this topic. And I found that in Alaska with both the scientists who are doing some of the hardest science you could ever imagine, hundreds of miles from the nearest road, camping out for weeks on end, hiking, boating, just incredible feats of expedition adventure, but also really good science. And then the Alaska natives who live in these areas and have since time immemorial and are feeling the first effects, of course, of these rusting rivers. I'd like to thank my editor, Mark Fischetti, at Scientific American for having the idea of telling this as a voyage of discovery and making it more of a narrative than just a standard news feature. I'd like to thank the Pulitzer Center for providing the funding to do the travel and the reporting. That funding, that center, their work is more and more important as journalism outlets like Hakai and others continue to close down. Finally, I'd like to thank my wife, Veronica, for putting up with me going away to Alaska for a month. Also, my parents, Roger and Sarah. And finally, AAAS and the Kavli Foundation for putting on these awards. Thank you.
The Gold Award for magazine, or in the magazine category, goes to Kate Evans for The End of the Everywhere Bird in New Zealand Geographic. Evans wrote that Heath Melville's, quote, first memory of red-billed gulls is shooting one with his slug gun when he was about 7 years old, just for something to do on a boring Kaikoura afternoon. But something about the dead bird moved him, the sleek white body fully alive 1 second, motionless the next. Melville, now a biodiversity advisor, thus began a lifelong fascination with the gulls. About the same time Melville was wielding his gun, Jim Mills already had been monitoring the Kaikoura gull colony for nearly 30 years. He and his colleagues would eventually tag more than 76,000 of the birds during 55 years of study. Their work revealed not only the birds' biology and behavior, but also how climate and oceanic conditions allow them to thrive or drive them to fail. Judge Sarah Zielinski, an editor for Science News Explorers, said the reality Evans presents, quote, is often brutal and sad, and yet she not only makes the reader care about what is often considered a trash bird, but also leaves us on a positive, hopeful note. Truly masterful. Kate.
Kia ora. Ko Kate Evans, toku ingoa. No Aotearoa ahau Māori ora koutou. I just wanted to give a brief introduction in the other official language of Aotearoa New Zealand, Te Reo Māori. Thank you. I'm extremely honoured to be here representing both New Zealand Geographic and the red-billed gull. New Zealand Geographic has nothing to do with Nat Geo, apart from a similar interest in themes and topics. It's a very tiny family-run magazine that manages to produce world-class photography and journalism, and I encourage you all to check it out at nzgeo.com. I also have to thank Richie Robinson, who is the photographer of this story. He pitched the story. This was his idea. He wanted to give red-billed gulls the same treatment he gives albatrosses in the Southern Ocean, and I was skeptical at first. Like the reader, I was like, really, red-billed gulls? But they turned out to be so much more interesting and beautiful than I'd imagined. I'd like to acknowledge Jim Mills, the scientist, who has spent 55 years, 3 months, like these long summers, day after day in the Kaikoura red-billed gull colony. This kind of science is irreplaceable and often goes unsung. And given that both bird, magazine, and study are all imperiled in the current climate, it's a real honour and privilege to shine a light on all of them today. Thank you.
The Video Spot News Feature Reporting Award, Silver Award, goes to Ruth Lichtman, Sharon Shattuck, Sarah Goodwin, Elliot Kirshner, and Regina Sobel for decoding ancestral knowledge, a video for the Science Communication Lab and YouTube. It described the work of Kiana Frank, a microbiologist and proud native Hawaiian. She intertwines traditional wisdom with the latest molecular techniques. I didn't become a scientist, Frank said. I was born a scientist. She recalled an ancestral story in which a hibiscus-like plant, puahau, turns yellow whenever a steward protector of a sacred Hawaiian fish pond relieves herself in it. Frank wondered if the tale had something to do with the cycling of nitrogen. Could the allegorical peeing in the pond be associated with spikes in ammonia, an inorganic form of nitrogen? Frank and her colleagues sampled the pond water multiple times a week over the course of a year, and every time we had a bloom of puahau and the hau was yellow, we would see these spikes in ammonia, Frank said. Janet Raloff, digital editor at Science News Explorers, said the winning video illustrates how ancestral stories can inspire meaningful environmental research when local scientists are clever enough to read the patterns in nature from which those ancient stories were drawn. Shattuck, Goodwin, Kirshner, and Sobel are now two-time winners of the AAAS Kavli Award. Ruth and Sharon are here.
Hi, hey everybody. We're so honored to be in the company of so many talented, incredible journalists. We'd like to dedicate this award to Kiana Frank, the subject of our documentary, and we'd like to thank SCL for making this possible, as well as the National Science Foundation. Thank you so much to AAAS and the Kavli Foundation.
Just to chime in, documentary film is in a state of crisis right now, just like a lot of professions, and I just want to emphasize that what we do matters. Telling these stories in a human way and shining a light on this beautiful science is important, so thank you.
The Gold Award for Video Spot News Feature Reporting goes to Jesse Nichols for videos for GRIST and Science Friday. The first, for GRIST, was about a protein called rubisco that is essential for photosynthesis, but is not particularly efficient at its job. Nichols visited MIT, where scientists have found a way to engineer bacteria to create and test thousands of different versions of rubisco in the lab. They envision futuristic plants that could produce higher yields and suck up more carbon. In his second video, for both GRIST and Science Friday, Nichols turned to a remarkable coral reef in the Gulf of Mexico that is holding its own even as reefs around the world are bleaching due to climate change. The reef in the Gulf is surviving in cooler waters atop an underwater mountain called a salt dome, despite being surrounded by drilling rigs seeking oil and gas deposits within the dome. The Nichols videos, quote, offer clear explainers, surprising details, and marquee visuals, said Judge Sikon Akpan, managing editor for Think Global Health at the Council on Foreign Relations. Jesse?
Thank you. This is really amazing. My goal with these videos, it was part of a science series called Proof of Concept. My goal was to show stories of how science can reveal hidden aspects of our world that would otherwise be invisible. And so to win such a great science award is really, really awesome. I'd like to thank GRIST and my editor, Teresa Chin, and most of all, I'd like to thank my video creative partner and mentor, Daniel Penner, who worked with me since I was an intern out of college and really encouraged me to do the kind of science journalism that this was a part of. Thank you.
So for video in-depth reporting, the Silver Award goes to Penny Palmer, Jeff Syberry, Kirsty Walsh, Oliver Graham, and Annika Berndt of the Australian Broadcasting Corporation for 2 episodes of Megafauna, What Killed Australia's Giants. Ice Age Australia was home to giant animals known as megafauna, including herds of wombat-like herbivores, short-faced kangaroos that may have been too massive to hop, heavily armored giant lizards, and a marsupial lion with bone-crushing jaws. The animals lived on the land for millions of years, but disappeared in a blink of time. Possible answers include the impact of rapid climate change on the megafauna's customary environment, as well as the arrival of human hunters who may have pushed the animals toward oblivion. Judge Janet Raloff praised the team's ability to capture the broad range of research disciplines, from earth science and astronomy to biomechanics and analysis of ancient indigenous rock drawings to narrow down what led to the demise of these awesome critters. Penny.
Thank you. Wow, thank you. You're not supposed to laugh when you hear about Australia's megafauna. You're supposed to go, ooh. If you imagine a kangaroo 6.5 feet tall, walking around like a T-Rex, then you have in mind the kind of creatures that we would have had back then. My team back in Australia, I had to write this down because I was a bit jet lagged, sorry. So my team back in Australia makes science documentaries for the general public, trying to explain and entertain in equal measure. And while we love good ratings, don't get me wrong, what you might not know is that we value the positive feedback from contributors to the program, and especially the scientists in the program, more, I think probably more than ratings. So being recognised by the AAAS and by the Kavli Foundation for these two programs has made the whole team really very proud. So thank you very much.
The Gold Award for in-depth video reporting goes to Catherine Gale, Archie Barron, Sean B. Carroll, Kathy Houlihan, and Alex Keefe for The Battle to Beat Malaria by Wingspan Productions and HHMI Tangled Bank Studios for Nova GmbH and Arte France. The mosquito-borne malaria pathogen kills approximately 600,000 people a year, the majority of them under the age of 5. Filmed over several years, the Nova documentary follows the Oxford University team that developed a highly effective malaria vaccine, which the World Health Organization approved in 2023 to protect children. Judge Sikon Akpan said the winning entry, quote, provides all that viewers could want from a science documentary. The behind-the-scenes production, the historical descriptions, and the clinical explanations are great, but I loved this project because of how it conveyed the agony and ecstasy of the research process. Sean B. Carroll, former head of HHMI Tangle Bank Studios, is now a 3-time winner of the award. Catherine Gale and Archie Barron will accept the award.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you to HHMI Tangle Bank Studios and to PBS Nova and GBH for their support in the making and the broadcast of this film. It was an enormous privilege to have the opportunity to tell this story, a story that we had tried to get made for a very long time. And as hard as it is to get funding for research into malaria, it's equally hard to get people to support you to make a film about malaria. But we got there with these people's support, and we're endlessly grateful for that. The story of the scientists and the families that were behind the development of this particular malaria vaccine is one that I think we're just so extraordinarily privileged to tell, that their commitment and their resilience and what they achieved over decades, the persistence that they had in that particular fight serves as a powerful reminder that science can and does have the power to change and even save, in this case, millions of lives. It's increasingly difficult, as I said, to get funding for this kind of research and also to make these films. And I think other people have made reference to this, but the problem with malaria vaccine research, any vaccine research, is it's great to develop a vaccine, but it's not vaccines that save lives, it's vaccination that saves lives. And at present, the means by which vaccines reach people around the world is under enormous threat, with the reduction of funding in the Global Fund, in the malaria vaccination program, to the WHO, and all of those organizations which are critical in turning this transformative science into science that actually transforms people's lives.
So we are endlessly grateful for being able to tell these stories, because if we tell these stories, then we can let people know and let a lay audience know that, you know, this science is being done, and where there is this science, there is this hope. And I think never more do we need these kind of stories to be told. So thank you.
The silver award in the audio category goes to Lulu Miller, Jen Brandell, Matt Keelty, Akady Foster Keys, and Alex Neeson of Radiolab and WNYC Studios for the interstitium, an introduction to a part of the body that had been invisible to scientists until hints of its existence appeared in 2015. It's a network of fluid channels inside tissues around our organs that scientists are just beginning to understand. The discovery came as doctors maneuvered a tiny and powerful new microscope into the interior of a narrowed bile duct. A fluorescent tracer revealed a honeycomb network of glowing holes in the wall of the duct, a wall that previously had appeared to be just a solid dark structure made of collagen. The researchers found similar patterns in collagen layers that wrap around other visceral organs in the living body, and concluded that places once thought to be solid structures are riddled with little tubes and tunnels filled with a fluid that amounts to 4 times the volume of blood in the body. Judge Naomi Starobin, managing editor for audio at radio station WAMU in Washington, said the Radiolab piece depicts the process of scientific discovery so beautifully. The importance of the discovery as it relates to real-world medical research comes through clearly. Matt Keelty will accept the award.
Surprise, I'm not Matt, but Matt's with me. Yeah, hi, I'm Jen. I accidentally started to report this story. I'm not a science journalist, and I just learned about this discovery and became so passionate about it because of the metaphorical implications of finding something that was there all along that our beliefs kept us from seeing, as well as just the adventure of getting to go and learn more about this in situ. I'm actually the second person ever living to have seen my own interstitium, which is great, and maybe the first person who has peed on NPR on the airwaves. And that's in part thanks to Matt Keelty's amazing production decision-making and taste in creating the story. So we had hours, hundreds of hours of tape that we collected over a whole year of reporting. And Matt was the one whose genius really stitched this together into such a rollicking, insane ride, and one that also has implications in my own life. I found out in the course of reporting the implications for cancer research, and my mother had just passed away from cancer right when I was reporting the story, and my daughter was actually diagnosed with cancer last year right after the story came out. So my hope is that the work of science reporting can hasten the research that leads to life-saving cures like this. And if we've played any small part in that, I will be forever grateful, as well as for this award and to be in community with all of you. I'll throw it to Matt for any further remarks.
Jen was adamant that I say something, so I'm just going to say thank you. Also, this carpet is incredible. I can't get over this. All right, sorry. Thank you.
The Gold Award for Audio goes to Sandra Canthal and Natasha Loder for Mila's Legacy, a BBC Radio 4 program. Producer Canthal and Loder, health editor at The Economist, told a very personal story of one Colorado mother's determination to save her daughter from a rare genetic disorder of the nervous system called Batten's disease. Julia Vitarello raised millions of dollars through a charity she set up in the name of her daughter, Mila Makovec. Dr. Timothy Yu of Boston's Children's Hospital took up the challenge and developed a one-of-a-kind treatment for Mila's specific genetic mutation. It stabilized her condition, but the disease had damaged her so much that she died when she was 10. Vitarello's campaign to help others benefit from such one-off personalized medicines continues. The goal is to show that customized medicines can be developed, regulated, and manufactured for a variety of rare diseases. Success will mean, quote, making sure they are more affordable and accessible than the current generation of genetic treatments, Loader notes, and that could be Mila's legacy. Judge Tina Say, a senior writer at Science News, said the audio broadcast, quote, eloquently and compellingly describes the very personal and important stakes behind regulation of treatments for very rare diseases and truly personalized medicine. It is the perfect example to illustrate the wider problem. Sandra, Natasha.
I'm the journalist, I'm the writer, and she's the audio person, and this was a great collaboration. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the Kavli and to the AAAS for recognizing this story and how important it was. It is a story actually about how we make medicines and whether the systems for regulations that we have is fit for purpose in this sort of new generation of medicines. And that's a really boring story to tell, right? And so Julia's story was the perfect one to illustrate it. And I know that she was absolutely thrilled that we won this award because it helps her tell her story, and she continues to fight at various levels to try and get these customized medicines made. And the ripples of this story are still being felt in Britain, in the regulatory agency there, and also in America. I also just want to say thank you to Sandy, because the way this came about was I wrote a story for The Economist, and I was chatting to Sandy in the pub. I was like, oh, I wrote this really great story. And she's like, well, let's make a radio program about it. And I couldn't have done it without her. So thank you very much.
Very generous. But I just want to say one quick word about the BBC, because journalism is such an important thing, and the BBC, like most other organizations around the world, is also having its moment and struggling, and we all need to support the great journalism that comes from places like that and all the other science publications and outlets that are here today. So to the Kavli for this, thank you very, very much. And to Natasha, who brought the story and was very generous in her comments. Thank you.
So the last award, the last two awards, the Silver Award for Children's Science News goes to Lindsay Patterson, Sarah Roberson-Lentz, and Marshall Escamilla of the Tumble Science Podcast for Kids for Swift Quake, an episode about Taylor Swift's Earth-Shaking Eras tour. The podcast team showed kids that seismology can measure more than just the tectonic activity of earthquakes. The episode features Jackie Kaplan-Auerbach, a geophysicist who became interested in comparing the beast quake caused by the Seattle Seahawks fans during a 2011 NFL playoff game with the recorded seismic activity in the same Seattle stadium during Taylor Swift's concerts. Kaplan-Auerbach measured high frequencies associated with the sound system, as well as low frequencies caused by the crowd dancing to Swift's music. The low frequencies are far and away the strongest signals that we recorded, she said. Judge Laura Allen, a freelance science journalist, called the story a fun way to get young people interested in the scientific process. The team masterfully wove a pop culture phenomenon into a real-life scientific exploration, she said, and the bonus was including fans along the way. Patterson, Lentz, and Escamilla are now two-time winners of the award, and Patterson and Escamilla will accept the award. And I'm sorry, and Lentz is here as well.
All right, I can't ignore the cognitive dissonance between so many of the incredibly serious stories that we've heard tonight. And yes, we did a story about Taylor Swift. But I think it underlies the importance of communicating science to children in a way that engages everyone. That is why we chose the subject, is because we want to bring people in, kids, their families, to explore and understand the scientific process. And the story about Taylor Swift ended up being one of our favorite stories we've ever told about how science works, thanks to the scientists really just following her curiosity, getting people involved, and just creating like an incredible moment that all Taylor Swift fans know about the Swiftquake. So we also want to thank AAAS and Kavli for recognizing children as an important audience, and the work that children's science journalists do as worthy of recognition as well, because they are the future. They are people who are going to be making incredibly difficult decisions and participating in the future in a way that we want them to understand and incorporate science. And anyone else?
I think you said everything.
All right, well, thank you so much.
For our final award of the night, the Gold Award for Children's Science News goes to Sarah Gottlieb for Dr. Ape Will See You Now, an engaging story in Muse magazine on the surprising ways primates use plants and insects for medicinal purposes. In this engaging story for Gottlieb opens her piece in Gabon's Luanga National Park with the story of a young chimpanzee who cuts his foot in a food fight. The chimpanzee's mother treats the cut with a paste made from chewed up insects. Gottlieb shares how scientist Alessandra Mascaro filmed the interaction between the mother and her child, capturing footage she suspected was the first known evidence of chimpanzees medicating with insects. Gottlieb also reports that many species of apes intentionally swallow a mass of leaves without chewing them to stimulate the gut and push out parasitic worms. Throughout the piece, she uses current studies to teach kids about the scientific process. The judges were particularly interested with Gottlieb's ability to appeal to young readers. Quote, "Her writing is engaging for a children's audience, such as mentions of the school cafeteria and a metaphor using an NBA player's arm," said Judge Christine Delamore, online natural history editor at National Geographic. In other words, she thought like a kid. Sarah?
Thank you so much to the AAAS and to the Kavli Foundation. I'd like to say thank you to the editor at Muse Magazine, Joseph Taylor. In 2022, I had a big idea for a middle grade nonfiction book, and so I entered a contest because I needed help. And he chose my pitch to mentor me for 6 months, and it was really incredible and life-changing. Along the way, he invited me to pitch for Muse, and this article on self-medicating apes was a result of that pitch. So huge thanks to Muse for doing that. I'd also like to thank my parents who are here tonight. I had the kind of parents who would throw a canoe on the station wagon and take us river camping for the weekend or wake us up at midnight so that we could see the meteor showers happening. And as a children's journalist, I think those moments of awe and wonder are really what matters. There's so many screens today and so much happening with climate change that whatever we can do to write these stories and to conduct this science and to bring children outside to have these moments of awe and wonder is everything. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for everyone, for the winners and for those of you who came to see them get their awards. We really appreciate the support the program has. We're now going to retire out the door and to the next room for food and drink. I would ask all of the winners to stay for a group photo over here on this side of the room. And I have a couple of other things, but I'll talk to you about that off mic. Thanks again for coming, everyone.